Hello again, it's Noob and you're watching my side channel Side Noob. Now, I hope that you might have seen my video on these two new lockpicks from Multipick that are designed by myself, which are the Abona and the Monith lockpick rakes. I think it's a really good overview, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd really appreciate it if you did go have a watch of that. This video, well, this is on my side channel. I just thought I'd give you a bit of behind the scenes on the sort of the design and pre-marketing of these picks. Something which having a side channel sort of allows me to do. So yeah, where do I start? Well, these are really, really beautiful picks made by Multipick. Everything about the design is, inherently Multipick. That it's the finish on them is just beautiful out of the factory. No rough edges. All the finishing is amazing. Look at the roundness of those peaks. Nothing sharp there, but still, got that point that you need. Still got that peak, but it's not sharp. It's just a beautifully finished item. Everything about the thickness of the material, the taper on the shanks, just everything is exactly how I had imagined it and wanted it. But you don't get there instantly. The first thing you need, of course, is the idea, and I cover that off in the video on my main channel. But once you have the idea, then you have to get it down on paper. Now, I do make custom lockpicks, but for some designs like these, it's really hard to get the precision you need to make a sort of one-off and then go to a manufacturer and say, hey, do you like the design? Would you consider making it? So I used a vector graphics program, and I drew up based on measurements using calipers, what I thought would be a good design. Then I used an online laser cutting service to make a bunch of picks. Now, you can see, well, these are the first ones. These are nothing to do at all with Multipick. They are entirely something which I had commissioned for me by a laser cutting service. And, well, they have drawbacks. First of all, why knowing the drawbacks would I bother doing this? It's because even though the material is wrong and there is no post-processing, there's no tumbling or finishing or filing at all, it does allow you to see what the design looks like, where there are problems, and even, considering it's completely the wrong steel, try it in some locks using light tension and see where you get to. Why light tension? Well, this is 0.7 millimeters. I think that's about 27 thousandths of an inch. And this isn't good steel for picks. It's brilliant steel. It's 316 stainless. It's brilliant steel for what it's intended to do, which is cladding or skinning things like lifts, elevators, those kind of things. But it's exceedingly poor steel for lockpicks. It's very, very malleable. It can't be hardened. So why did I choose this? Well, really, online laser cutting services don't tend to deal with very specialized steels. They do tool steels, but of course tool steels don't come generally this thin commonly, or at least that's what I found out. Of course, you can order in a steel if you like from places that sell it, but then you've got to buy minimum order quantities, have it shipped over, send it to the right manufacturer. They need to calibrate their machines to the thickness of the steel. It goes on, and what turns out to be a simple does it look right turns into a wow, that was really, 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 really expensive. I'm never going to see that money again. So we didn't go down that route. So we stuck with 316 stainless as a proof of concept, just to see for myself whether it was the right design. This is way before I approached Multipick about these. This is just for me to see whether the design worked. What did I find out? Well, I found out that I wasn't happy with how thin the steel was at the bottom here. The peaks were incredibly sharp, and I did obviously filed them down a little bit with some sandpaper just to take the rough edges off, but it was still a bit too sharp, I found. It wasn't quite right. I thought that the overall thickness needs to be a little thicker, and the peaks a little more rounded. So that's what I did. I did a round 2, and this is what we ended up with there. And again, this is way before I was involving Multipick in this. It was just for my own benefit. Now, if you can see there, hopefully you can see that I increase the roundness of the peaks, so they're not quite as sharp, and by 0.2 of a millimeter the thickness overall. Still using this 0.7316 stainless. I know I've mentioned it before, but do not ever make picks to use out of this material. You'd probably need something around 1/4 inch thick to be even slightly as stable as a lockpick. It's way too soft. But is it good enough for me to try in a lock? Absolutely, like once or twice, and then the pick gets destroyed. But nevertheless, what did I find out here? Well, I added way too much material. 0.2 is quite large when you're dealing with this kind of sizes. Look, can you see the difference here? Just massive, isn't it? But I did like the roundness of the peaks, and that's when I changed the design again. So I'm using a 2D vector program here, like I said, and it gives you the opportunity to change your dimensions. But once I got it right, only then did I speak to Multipick about it, and they were really good. They completely understood what I was trying to go for, and so based off my final design, they made and finished these. Now look, these are Multipick. They're made out of the fabulous Multipick steel with a brilliant finishing process, but they aren't branded. So you can see that all that sort of final finish on the etching on the handles isn't there. So for me, that's like super cool. It's like a really rare item. I can't believe that many of these are in existence, and I only have a few myself. But it's sort of cool to have a product that's made by Multipick. And what we did was then actually try these out. Now Multipick said, with these, could you send us a video of them in use? I thought, well, I absolutely can do. But I thought, well, what format do I do the video in? I could just be like, hey, Multipick, here it is working in some blocks. And I thought, well, do you know what? I'm just going to do a video like I normally do for an overview. I'm just going to talk about the designs, what I intended to do with them, show them being used in a load of locks. Very much actually like the overview video I did on my main channel. And what I thought I'd do is basically show you that video that I did, and it was intended for Multipick, certainly not for my main audience, but there's nothing in it which is untrue. And I think if you compare the two videos, you'll see that they are basically very similar. But you can see here that once I tried these, they were absolutely perfect. There was nothing I wanted to change about them at all. So that's where we stuck. Just compare it to the originals. So just do an overlay of this one, for example. You can see how we just increase a tiny amount more material there, increase the peak width. It's and that's the importance, the massive importance of prototyping things and seeing if they actually work, and if they don't, changing it. Because you go from something which seems like a good idea in principle to something which actually is a good idea in practice, and that's really what you're aiming for. And then of course we come back full circle to the final designs with the beautifully etched handles. There we go. And yeah, I'm really proud of these. They work brilliantly. They're a great, more dynamic alternative to your snake rake and city rake or L rake, and I absolutely love them. Anyway, without further ado, I'm just going to roll tape and show you me using the two prototype picks from Multipick in use. Like I said, I did the video as if I was doing it to a wider audience, but really I was just doing it for Multipick itself. Okay, thank you for watching. Enjoy the video. Please do drop a like if you like the video, a comment if you want to below, really helps me. Subscribe if you can, I'd really appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Hello again, it's Noob, and I just want to show off these two prototype rakes, the Abona and the Monith, that I helped develop for Multipick. So, what's my inspiration? What's the thoughts behind these profiles? Well, let me show you, starting with the Abona rake here, which I think you can see is a multi-peaked rake, and I designed this to be suitable for both rocking back and forth in a lock, and also some kinetic raking techniques. My thoughts started off with something as traditional as a city rake or L rake, and I like these, but they're not very dynamic. They're good at rocking up and down inside locks, but the bitting on this, if you will, isn't too extreme and is often limited to very, very flat profiles in locks. Likewise, something like a very traditional triple peak like this can be a little bit too much in some shallower keyways, with the amplitude between the peak and the trough being somewhat a little bit too high. I designed the Abona rake to be somewhat in between there, so useful for rocking, but also useful for kinetic raking attacks in keyways, well, locks with less extreme bitting, should we say. Looking at something like the Monith, we can see that this is just an adaptation of a traditional snake rake. The difference being that in this case you have a slightly more extreme amplitude between the peaks and the troughs, and we have a much more pronounced first peak. If I overlay these, you'll see. I absolutely love the snake rake profile, but again I find that sometimes it's just not dynamic enough. It doesn't deflect the pins quite enough in some keyways. So I don't see this as a replacement, rather than something that's complementary and might be used in more extreme bittings. Let's have a look at some locks where I'm using the Abona. We'll have a look at the bitting, then I'll overlay the me using this to pick the lock. So first up is a really nice 5-pin padlock full of spools, and actually for a small keyway like this, a really nice bitting, lots of ups and downs. I find that I can't use something like a city rake in this, it just won't work. Likewise, I have found that a triple peak is just a bit too much, and whilst I can get some opens with it, it tends to get a little bit trapped inside there too. So I'll have a go at raking just using the Abona and seeing how well it performs. Now this lock is, well, it's a strange one. It's actually got lots of spool pins in and they are active, but it's also got a very flat bitting. So to rake this, you can actually use a city rake, and you can actually use a triple peak, but it just seems a little bit easier, for me at least, to use the Abona in a lock like this with light tension, just scrubbing quite high in the keyway. Moving on, this lock has a relatively good bitting, 6 pins, spools inside, and again, using the Abona you can use a combination of rocking and kinetic raking to get opens on bittings even like this, but you certainly wouldn't be able to do that with a city rake. Just as a bonus, we'll even try to rake this master lock open. The reason I've chosen this is it's almost like a club style bitting in this, and it's a relatively small keyway. This particular lock has quite good spools in. It's a European variant, so yeah, let's have a look at that too. Here's a good time to look at a bitting which actually you can use the Abona to pick. This is a hybrid pick where I start raking with the Abona and then I go on to just a short hook to pick the last pin, which happens to be pin 6 right at the back. This is where the dynamic nature of the Monith actually comes in, because I can use the Monith to be a bit more accurate with my placement, scrubbing at the front, scrubbing at the back, and between the feedback and the pick I can actually get pretty accurate placement on the inside of this lock and get an open where I didn't with the Abona. I don't have a key for this big padlock, but I know that it has a number of spools in, and again the more accurate placement that the Monith gives means that in slightly more extreme bittings you are just able to be a little bit more precise with where you're attacking in the keyway and responding to the feedback it gives. And last but not least, we have another master lock with a sort of a club-like bitting, where it's actually quite useful to have something that's quite small to go in behind a low set first pin and attack the pins behind it. So there we are, the Abona and the Monith. Certainly not a replacement for your favourite traditional picks, but a really nice complementary pair of picks which will give you just a little bit more dynamic control inside some of those locks, and they're certainly more suited to different keyways than the other tools which you see in front of you. So all I can say is thank you to Multipick for helping this come true, and I'll see you all next time.